Why does God take it so seriously? Even if you say, well, I don't understand money. Pastor, I hear what you're saying, but I understand why it's so bad. Isn't it just forces of the market and you can't help it? No, that's not true. Listen to God's word. There's a reason it's this serious. I'm not even sure it's important that you even understand why, but I'll talk about it in a little bit. But not only does the Bible teach us, and that ought to be sufficient for us, but listen to Charles Lindbergh, a man that many Americans can look up to, I think, and admire. But at the time, Charles Lindbergh was a U.S. congressman. And in 1913, Charles Lindbergh made this remark about the passage of the Federal Reserve Act. That's when the Federal Reserve came into being. Listen to what Charles Lindbergh said about our adopting the Federal Reserve System. He said, quote, "This act, the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, this act establishes the most gigantic monopoly," he used the word trust, but the word trust means monopoly. "This act establishes the most gigantic trust or monopoly on earth. When the President Wilson, when the President signs the act," so I guess he's arguing this actually just before it was passed. Well, maybe it was passed, but it hadn't been signed by the President yet. It's in 1913 he's saying it. "This act establishes the most gigantic trust on earth. When the President signs the act, the invisible government, by the money power, proven to exist by the money trust investigation, will be legalized. The new law will create inflation whenever the trust wants inflation. From now on, depression will be scientifically created. The worst legislative crime of the ages is perpetrated by this banking and currency bill." Congressman Charles Lindbergh. If you can't believe him, can't you believe God's word? He put the death penalty on such activity. People say, I don't understand. You can understand that God said it, can't you? Even if you can't understand it, isn't that enough? But hold on. There's, I won't even take time to look this up. You can do it on your own. In the Hebrew, there's a word, Hebrew word, kesef. Kesef. And kesef is translated money. In Deuteronomy 26:6, it says, "Ye shall buy meat of them for money." And the Hebrew word is kesef. When it's transliterated, it's Keseph. Translated money. Ye shall buy of them, you shall buy meat of them for kesef, for money is how it's translated. Shall also buy water of them for kesef, but it's translated money. There's many examples here in Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 25. "Then shalt thou turn it into money." The Hebrew word is kesef. Deuteronomy 21, verse 14. "Thou shalt not sell her at all for money." The Hebrew word is kesef. In chapter 23, verse 19, "Usury of money, usury of victuals." Well, that usury of money, the word there, money, translated money, is the Hebrew word kesef. It's translated money. Okay, we get the idea. So kesef means money, yes. Now, in the same book of the Bible, Deuteronomy, the exact same Hebrew word, kesef, is also translated silver. Deuteronomy 7:25, "Thou shalt not desire the silver or gold." Silver, kesef. Chapter 8, verse 13, thy silver and thy gold is multiplied. Silver, kesef. Chapter 29, verse 17, wood and stone, silver and gold. The word silver, the Hebrew, kesef. So we know from the Bible that this word, kesef, means silver and is equated with and is also translated money. Now, one thing you'll find in the Bible, gold and silver is money. Let me underscore that again. Gold and silver is money in the Bible. Now, money should be an asset, correct? We all would like to have more of it. Why? Because it's beneficial to us. It profits us. It is an asset, or at least so we think. In a sane world, money is an asset. Now, silver and gold has intrinsic value. Its value is recognized across the world. Silver and gold is never going to be worth nothing. There's an inherent value to those precious metals, and there's a limited supply of those precious metals, and so it's a good base upon which to establish a means of the transfer of goods and services. And that's why money should be based on something of inherent intrinsic value in limited supply, and thus when we exchange paper bills, if I give you a paper bill that we call money, it should represent a certain quantity of gold or silver or some such other valuable asset that is universally recognized and is in relative limited quantity in order for it to function efficiently. But it's an asset. Money represents an asset. Now you say, well, that all makes sense. That's right. Well, through the Federal Reserve System, we went off the gold standard. The final nail in the coffin, I understand, was under Richard Nixon when he finally put the last nail in the coffin, and then our money had no relation whatsoever to gold anymore. But our money used to be you could trade in U.S. Money for a certain quantity of gold. Can't do that anymore. It isn't backed by an asset. You got to realize our current money, when you put a $20 bill in your wallet, do you know what that $20 bill represents, or what's backing that $20 bill? It used to be that if you had money, you could exchange in the paper and get that quantity of gold, however much gold was represented by that denomination of paper bills. But now, it's not backed by gold or silver. You say, well, there's got to be something that backs up the money. It just can't be paper. Otherwise, Okay, well, it is backed by something. You know what it's backed by? Debt. Our money, the money you put in your wallet, is debt. It's backed by debt. It's an IOU. This is turning everything on its head. We're now calling good evil and evil good. It's done intentionally so that the average person can be robbed of the byproduct of his labor through his life, and he doesn't even know that it's happening. Do you get what I'm saying? The magnitude of this crime? Here's what happens. Let me try and illustrate it for you. I one time wrote a little paper on it, and this is the illustration I gave, and I'll give it to you. Say the government never raises enough taxes to pay for all its socialist anti-American programs. We know that, right? If they dared taxes for everything they do, there'd be a revolution in the streets, right? Right. So they can only tax us to a certain point before we grab our rakes and our hose and our torches and lanterns and go down to Washington, D.C. So they push the envelope to a certain point, but then they got to get their money elsewhere. Now, if they just out and out borrow it, we can still tag them on that, because sooner or later we're going to find out. And they do borrow money. We borrow it from communist Red China, of all places. But there's still another means of revenue the government uses other than our taxes and borrowing money from ungodly places like communist Red China, and now we're servants to the lender. But there's another place that nobody even hardly considers, and that's the Federal Reserve System and the ability to print money. Here's what happens. The government taxes us to the point they think they can get away with. Then they stop. Then they borrow as much money as they can from places like China or whoever, and then they stop. But they still want to spend more. So what do? They go to the Federal Reserve. This is what they do. And they go to the discount window of the Federal Reserve, and they say, look, we, for instance, use a hypothetical example, we need $1 million. So here is an IOU. The American taxpayers of this country